Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Joyful Telepathy Podcast. I am your host, Kate Sitka, animal communicator and spirit medium. I help people all over the world talk to their loved ones in spirit and to talk to their animals who are alive and in spirit. To book a session with me, just click the link in this episode's description or visit tofinopsychic.com. This podcast is brought to you by my online course, Telepathic Communication with Animals and Spirit. I would love to help you learn to do this work, and there's plenty of it to go around. I believe that telepathic communication is something that most of us do naturally, and that you can learn how with practice, encouragement, and support. To learn more, visit tofinopsychic.com/class. You can email me anytime, tofinopsychic@gmail.com. And now, perk up your ears and park your fears. Here's this episode of the Joyful Telepathy Podcast. Hi, Andrea. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm well. How are you?
Good. I'm great. I'm so happy to be talking to you again. It's been a while.
Too. It's been a long time. It feels like forever.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for coming onto the podcast to discuss some of this ridiculousness with me.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I had a feeling you were going to touch a chord with people.
I had a little feeling that, I might get a little bit of a reaction. And honestly, I worded the podcast and I worded the blog post and the YouTube video. I worded it very carefully because folks can be so touchy, right?
It doesn't, this is what I love about resonance, because if it resonates with you, it resonates, and it doesn't matter if it's a positive reaction or a negative one. It's like, oh, you're touching on something inside of me that's making me react.
Yeah.
Right? And there's your invitation to go deeper.
And I've been really thinking about this as well, and why people responded so strongly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is if you're someone who really identifies strongly with your spiritual identity, and then here I am coming in and saying, maybe that's not, maybe that's causing some people some harm, and maybe you need to look at that. It's deeply threatening for some people.
Absolutely.
It just kicks them right in the root chakra. It doesn't feel good. So here I come in,
exactly right.
Joy killer, thunk.
Absolutely. But that's, and this is, I just have to side note myself. I am a self-confessed cherry picker. And it's something, that episode resonated with me because my habit of cherry picking, and whether it's a helpful way to go about my spirituality, that question has been up for me for quite some time.
And I cherry pick too. Absolutely, I do.
Yeah. But I say that to say, when I cherry pick, I really appreciate so many of the tenets of Buddhism.
Exactly. Me too.
Yes. And so, again, when someone like yourself puts something out there publicly, hey guys, maybe we should all look at this, as an invitation to kind of check ourselves and check in and ask about our own intentions. The part of myself that's like, wait, but I don't do that. That's the attachment.
Right, exactly.
and it's like, okay, attachment leads to resistance, which means we're not in flow. Yeah. And so for me, it all falls into line. And it's the questions as we continue to deepen our spiritual practice. I think these are the exact questions we should be asking ourselves.
It's a part of spiritual practice to check ourselves and to question ourselves. I mean, that's the only reason I've grown, is because I pay attention. Otherwise, I'd be off, copying what other people are doing, not thinking about it, repeating what other people have said. I think that's really what this conversation, and why I wanted to start this conversation. And really the whole point of the podcast is I want to have conversations that people aren't having in other spaces, because I think it's really useful. Well, we've gone and dove right into it here. You've not been a guest on my podcast before, have you, Andrea?
No, ma'am.
Would you like to introduce yourself so people know who the heck we're talking to here?
Sure, absolutely. And funny enough, I actually pronounce my name Andrea.
Oh my God!
But this is actually a separate conversation. You've had a podcast about names, and I have created space between my name and my attachment to my name. So I no longer correct people.
I wish you had.
No. Here's the funny, talk about an introduction.
Yeah.
My parents even pronounce my name differently than I pronounce my name. My calling myself Andrea is how I see myself. My parents call me Andrea. My relatives call me Dre.
Andrea.
Right?
Andrea. So can I now switch? I'm going to retrain myself, but is that all right? Can I switch to Andrea?
You can call me whatever you like.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to me as long as it's coming from a place of love.
All right. I'm gonna do Andrea, because I having walked that name path myself and renamed myself, I think I personally, it's one of my values to pronounce people's names correctly or in the way that they prefer that resonates with who they are. So if Andrea is close to you, and please correct me if I've screwed up again. My gosh. Okay.
I know.
Right.
I've thought about having this conversation with you so many times, and I've told myself not to because of my attachment. So again, this is
your name.
But when you get in your feelings, when someone accidentally calls you Andrea or Adrian or Adriana, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like 5 minutes later, I'm sweating, I'm all up in my feelings. It's like, wait a minute, why am I reacting so strongly to something that's very innocent? Mm-hmm. And because I have a tendency to become attached to things, not correcting people is my way of practicing non-attachment.
Yeah, that is so interesting that this is a spiritual practice for you.
Yeah.
To not correct people. Well, I'm so glad that we've now reached the point in our friendship where I know your name.
But you know my energy, right?
I do. And I adore you, regardless of
the feeling's mutual.
Yeah. Okay. So continue with your introduction.
I call my name Andrea. Mm-hmm. I live in Northern California in what's known as the Oakland-San Francisco Bay Area, historically known as the Ohlone territory of the Ohlone Native American peoples. I am historically, spiritually, and religiously Catholic. Mm-hmm. So that has colored so much of my growth, kind of running away from the teachings of my childhood. Recovering
Catholic.
Right, yeah. The recovering Catholic. And I recently said to a priest, I said, I just want you to know I'm no longer in recovery. Mm-hmm. I'm no longer trying to shed it.
Yeah.
I'm allowing my Catholic foundation to support me, maybe, hopefully in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because again, here we go with attachment and resistance. Me fighting Catholicism, me trying to run away from the teachings that were so very dear to my parents and grandparents and ancestors. Mm-hmm. That also feels like an attachment to me. Mm-hmm. Not being Catholic. That's a whole thing.
The dogma of the atheist is it can be severe.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. So I would also say that even just a part of my introduction is the practice and cultivation of compassion. Mm-hmm. And first and foremost, truly for myself. Mm-hmm. Because that's not easy. And if I'm not compassionate towards myself, especially in the realm of like my spiritual life, then I cannot extend it to anyone else.
Yeah.
So even just like learning how to be gentle, how to not judge myself, like I screw up all the time, I make mistakes, I make missteps, and really coming out of the habit of oh, well, you done fucked this up, girl. You know, you're even joking about like, oh, you're going to hell for that one. It's so built in.
I love that you're inviting that in right in the introduction, because I think that's what gives us permission. I mean, before we can really change or improve, we have to be able to admit and accept ourselves when we screw up. Right. And so you have to have that built into your, you have to have a certain amount of resilience built into your spiritual identity.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And non-judgment.
Yeah.
Just removing the judgment. Like sometimes even the language that we use is colored with judgment. And so to even just try to, oh, wow, I said that word that, you know, colors this thing, and maybe I'm projecting negativity onto myself. And it's like, okay, I did that again. Let it go. So,
or even simply observing. Yeah. Simply observing the judgment.
Noticing.
Yeah. If you have it, because right now I'm going, my God, I can't believe I never asked if I was pronouncing your name correctly. Because I'm just observing that judgment within myself.
Absolutely. And I used to judge people for not pronouncing my name correctly. You know, how hard is it, right?
Yeah. So this is every moment is a learning and a growth. But we're asking people to really stretch and to really tap into to not judging themselves, not judging others who say things that they may not agree with, and sitting with the discomfort. Yeah. And really considering what's going on here. This is about harm reduction.
Am I harming or am I being helpful?
Yeah. Yeah, and I try in my life to put out things that are helpful. I mean, this podcast, it's nice that it grows the awareness of what I do, and that I do get business through the podcast sometimes. But I mean, this, it's really about building a body of work. It's really about what is the presence that I want to have in the world? What do I want to contribute to the world? And I try to do that with most things. You know, my hospital job, how I interact. Nobody's perfect, obviously, but I think I think that from a spiritual perspective, when you go back, if I often will imagine myself on my deathbed, reviewing my life before I die, and what do I wish I had done or said? What do I wish I had put energy into? Because I don't believe in regretting things in life, so I want to make sure that I don't regret at the end. I want to make sure I haven't passed up opportunities or, been, Point said. I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah. Well, that's, I appreciate that you said that so much. I love telling this little story about myself because I think it really speaks to what you just said. What is our intention? So I guess it's been about 4 years now. I earned my certification as a hypnotherapist.
You did?
Yes, I did. I
remember you talking that you were working on it. Okay.
Yes. So it's been several years now. And that was a huge kind of, leveling up in terms of spirituality. And a lot has changed and I've grown quite a bit. And during that time, I also learned a lot. You know, I've become very close to crystals and stone people. I've started practicing tarot. I began cultivating my relationship with spirit, not just our ancestors, but also like trees and nature and animals. And so much has changed. And in this process, I actually created for myself what I call my secret Instagram account.
Really?
And yes. So I did this whole secret Instagram account. I was so nervous when I did it. Like my heart was racing, just starting it. And my intention was to not tell people I know, but just to kind of have this spiritual life that I can share with the outside world, because my spirituality is very, very private.
Yeah.
I really, I share maybe some things with some people, but not a lot, honestly. I really just wanted a community. And I was like, I'm going to do this Instagram page. And over time, I found myself telling people about it. I found myself telling like my friends and my cousins. And then after a while, I'm like, I think your intention's a little bit a little bit not in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was kind of I was really wanting kudos for doing these things that I think are really awesome and incredible.
Mm.
It was a very like humbling moment when I had to really just in a very non-judgmental way say, I think you're just trying to look cool. It's not a secret Instagram page that everyone you know knows about. Right? So I had to stop posting. I stopped posting because going back to what you said about your podcast, I didn't feel that I was really saying anything. You know, now I might pull a crystal of the day or a tarot card of the week. I might check in with my goddess cards, and I can journal about it and fold these ideas and mythologies into my daily practice. But when I'm really just waiting to get those likes, so-and-so started following you.
The poison of Instagram.
I know. And so that was, it was a really great opportunity for me to check myself and to ask myself, what is your intention here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so again, it's like we keep coming back to this. What am I doing? What am I doing this for? And it wasn't worth continuing because my intentions were not to create something lasting. I wasn't really there to teach anyone. I was really there to like share this cool thing about my personal life. and there's no judgment. I haven't posted on that page in like 2 years. I'm not judging myself over it. I find it very humorous. That's why I like telling the story. Because it's like, yeah, no biggie. I hope one day I can create a public space where I can share these things. And for that, I actually want to thank you for even giving me the opportunity to talk about these things on your platform.
Yay.
You know, I hope I'm doing it with the right intention and not doing it to sound cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to say you're welcome. I'm going to say thank you for coming on my platform and sharing yourself with me, because that's an act of trust that I really appreciate. So, you know, it's an honor for me to have you on. So thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
So speaking of Instagram, did I mention to you that I've had a conversation with my friend Lana?
No.
Did I mention that to you? Okay, so I've got two guests, you and Lana, and I was actually hoping to have the Lana episode posted by now, so that you'd have a chance to listen to it. But unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to get that done. So I'm not going to go through all of the comments that I got in response to this, because I did go through them with Lana, and I don't want to duplicate the conversation.
Sure.
But I do have a couple. I have a couple of like the real gems that I would like to bounce off you and have you respond if that's okay.
Absolutely.
And the worst bunny quotes, the ones that really made my jaw drop, were off of Instagram.
Yeah. Okay.
Surprisingly. So, you know, so in response to my post of, you know, here's why I do not smudge, or I think it was like why I no longer smudge. I got a couple of responses. So there's three there. I picked the three golden ones here. First one says, you could have been an Indian in your last incarnation. This makes no sense. And this is such a common response.
Yes.
And I mean, I could go off and respond on this, but I would like to invite you to respond first.
Absolutely. Would you like me to respond to each one, or just like take it all in and then?
I would like you to respond to each one.
Okay, because I already have a response.
Yes.
I love that. The beauty of discourse. I love that this person brought this up. So again, this entire conversation is extremely timely for me. I think a week either before or after you posted your podcast and video, I had this conversation with a friend of mine.
Really? Interesting.
Yes. So she is, as she understands it, of Viking descent. That's just how she identifies her cultural heritage.
Whoop, me too.
Okay, there we go. And her most recent lifetime, she was an African-American man.
In her most recent incarnation.
In her most recent previous life incarnation.
Right.
And that was a lifetime that was very special to her. This masculine spirit really resonates with her still. She has a beautiful singing voice, and when she sings, she often sings like a Black man.
Really?
A very, very soulful, very gospel-y, even though she's like a 6 foot, blonde.
Wow.
And so the conversation that we were having, it was kind of separate, actually. She was asking me about white privilege. And sometimes when... there was a situation that happened here in the States. She was basically asking when bad things happen, especially around like race and racism and culture. And then we also separately believe in like soul contracts and, life lessons. She was asking, is it white privilege to kind of look at these incidents of racism or low vibration ghosts, we can call them. And when we say, oh, well, that's a soul contract, is it white privilege to just kind of write it off like that? So that's actually how the conversation came
Good
up.
one, yeah.
Yeah, that was a really great question.
That's a good, insightful question.
Yeah. So we were just kind of talking about this, and I can't even go into the entire conversation, but one thing she was saying, she's like, she really is connected to this past life as this Black man. And she really doesn't want to have anything to do with her Viking ancestors.
I know that feeling.
Right? And so it's like, well, even that you think it's an option is white privilege, right? Like you don't live your life as a Black man. So you even tapping into like the soul thing and being able to unplug from it any time is privilege.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the way the conversation went. And, I love exploring past lives. I think it's very, very interesting, and it can be very helpful and healing. And this is what I said to my friend, you are an incarnated white woman. You come from Vikings. These are your people. And when and now some of what I'm sharing, I've picked up from teachers like Malidoma Somé, who comes from Burkina Faso in West Africa. Daniel Thor, who is a American white male, who's studying and sharing ancestral medicine. But essentially, when we say, I don't want to do anything with my previous, in this lifetime ancestors, they were awful. They were Vikings. They were slave owners. They were horrible. They were slaves. They were, it's shameful. As I understand it, as an incarnate human being in this lifetime, 2018, flesh and blood, physically, your DNA is of your ancestors in this lifetime. Our past lifetimes, we can draw on for support and guidance and insights, but you are not just a soul. You are an incarnated human being.
Yes.
So, yeah, totally might have been a Native American in your last lifetime. And in this lifetime, whatever your cultural identity is, that is your work in this lifetime.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Whatever your cultural identity is, that is your work in this lifetime.
That's your work.
Yeah.
And yeah, totally. If you were Native American in your past lifetime, like my friend was this, amazing African-American man who she just really connects with, tap into that when you need his support. Go there when you need those teachings, but don't pretend like you're not a Viking, sweetie.
Yeah.
Those are your people. And just to go back to the tenets of Buddhism, us rejecting our slave-owning, colonizing, really brutal ancestors is a rejection of our bodies. Talk about root chakra. Like, you can't say, I don't want my bones. Mm-hmm. I'm ashamed of where my bones have been. I'm ashamed of my DNA.
Yeah.
Go into the shame. Again, if it's resonating with you, if it's upsetting you, even in the slightest bit, go into it, investigate it, become curious, as opposed to, oh no, it was really awful back then. I'm just going to go back to my previous lifetime when things were really great.
Yeah.
I think they call that spiritual bypass. I think that's the name. Is when you just kind of lean on your spiritual life without getting real.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, which is why I'm asking for help for people to come.
And I'm not either, for the record.
And I think that, spiritual bypassing, I think that certainly can encompass that. I think it's also about, there's another comment that's actually coming up that I think will demonstrate spiritual bypassing quite a bit, but it's basically, it is using your spirituality to abdicate responsibility, your responsibility, your role. Yeah. And, and a shout out to your Viking friend. I've got a similar, you have to reckon with yourself, as a white spiritual person, our work is to reckon with ourselves. And, I've got the Viking history. I've got Nazis in my family. There are many different, my family is made up of colonizers and perpetrators of genocide. My family wasn't trying to hide people. They were active participants in the communist regime in Germany. And so I have, that is my legacy. That is my work to do.
That's exactly right.
And holding my family with love and holding myself with love. But that doesn't mean that I, accept or inherit their, the values that they lived, values,
right.
the beliefs that they lived, because I'm a step in that evolution. I'm a step in getting away from that, in getting better. And speaking to Vikings too, I think anyone that has that kind of a heritage where if we've done our ancestry DNA, my dad paid for it, and because he was curious, he's always been very curious about the genealogy. And when I saw the map of everywhere my people have been, I was horrified. That was my first response was, oh my God, because I knew all of the immigration, every single one, where it was boop from this continent to that continent. I was like, and that's a war, and that's a war, and that's a war, and you have to witness it. You have to be able
That's exactly right.
And unfortunately, the Viking thing is now being, the white supremacists are all over the Nordic.
Right.
And so that's brought this extra element to it. But that's our responsibility. That's who's going to carry it.
Responsibility. And especially, here in this state, I can't speak for Canada, but perhaps, there's a lot of ghosts here. Oh, Canada
is exactly the same. Yeah.
Right? Like making the difference between a ghost and a spirit.
Yeah.
In shamanic teachings, lowercase s, not capital, there is a distinction between the ancestors who lived well and died well.
Yeah.
And, to notice, okay, not all ancestors are the same. And then those who did not live well and those who did not die well, can we not ignore it? Are we willing to sit with the discomfort and be open to healing it? And this is actually going to kind of take me on a side note, but I think it's really important. So I am of African ancestry and European ancestry. And not a lot was known about our ancestors, especially on my father's side, the Black side. It was all oral. And so now that we're able to take the DNA test, I've actually uncovered quite a bit of information.
Ooh, really?
Oh my goodness. It's quite deep.
How is that for you? How does that make you feel to see these layers peeled back?
It's in many ways it's been comforting, even though it's not pretty, right? Yeah. So as a kid, I have a really large family. My dad had 11 brothers and sisters. My grandmother had 15 brothers and sisters. My grandfather had like 13 brothers and sisters. So my father's side is very, very large. And we knew that we were from Opelousas, Louisiana, and had been there quite some time, but not much was known. So there's what I've been able to uncover, and then there's actually what I learned in hypnotherapy. I'm gonna go back a little bit to hypnotherapy because that's actually what I uncovered first. And this actually speaks to like our flesh and blood, along with this idea of like, what if we have these soul contracts? You know, what is that? How does that play into it? So when I was in hypnotherapy school, the way that our classes were structured, we would learn about a process. Our teacher would demonstrate on the group or on one person, and then we would practice on each other. So we'd kind of review it repeatedly before we move on.
Wow.
It was very in-depth and just a really great experience, truly. So we were actually learning about spirit attachments and learning how to check in with your auric field to make sure that the energy you're holding is yours. And so that's really where it started. And we were just kind of doing a check-in. And when she asked me, what are you experiencing? You know, is your energy yours, or are you picking up other things? And what I sensed was, and the way I described it was a general fog. That's how it felt in my auric system, that there was just a fogginess that was not mine. And so she went into it and she guided me through. And in hypnosis, just to clarify for any listeners, it's a deep relaxation trance state. You are lucid. You know, if the phone rings, you can answer it. I'm not out. She's not knocking me out. You're just really relaxed, most relaxed you've ever been, so that you can access your subconscious. And when we go into this general fogginess, and, you know, it's a question and answer, you know, she's asking me, well, what does it feel like and where does it come from? I'm just going to kind of talk about it without doing the back and forth.
Right. Okay.
And so essentially what I'm beginning to uncover in trance is that this fogginess goes back about 6 or 7 generations. And there's an angry, very angry slave woman who comes forth. And let me tell you, she is pissed, like beyond pissed. And I was channeling her energy and I could feel her rage inside of me. I remember kind of like trembling a little bit with anger. She was so charged. And essentially the slave woman says, you know, you did not keep up your end of the bargain. This other relative who she's talking to, this other relative purchased slaves. The soul contract was to set them free. This was very common in the American South for, you know, if you were a free slave, you would purchase other slaves, perhaps even your family members, with the intent on freeing them.
Right.
And this gentleman did not free his relatives.
Oh.
And he was a horrible, horrible person to them.
Whoa.
She did not show me what he did, but the feeling that I got and the words that she was saying was essentially, you did not keep your end of the bargain. And in fact, you went in the opposite direction. So you and all of your descendants got exactly what you deserve. Essentially, she put a curse on this gentleman and his descendants. This is her relative. The word that I used in trance was not curse. It was a thought attachment.
Right.
So we curse each other all the time. We curse ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that was essentially like, no good will come to you. Mm-hmm. That was essentially like her energy to him was like, life is going to suck from here on out.
Yeah.
No good is going to come to you. And when we tuned into his energy and we allowed them to converse back and forth, he was completely embarrassed and remorseful. Uh-huh. He recognized he got really caught up in the power and did not free the slaves. He confirmed, no, I did not. I did not hold up my end of the bargain. I was horrible. And so in this, charged conversation that I'm channeling, and there were witnesses, which I'm very grateful for, because I feel like sometimes things that I experienced are quite wild.
Yeah.
We provided them an opportunity for forgiveness. Uh-huh. The gentleman apologized, and just going back and forth. And at some point, this slave woman said, okay, I release you. I can let this go now. It's done.
Wow. And now, this you're holding in your body generations later.
Generations. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting about this, with such a large family, we've had a lot of bad luck. Mm-hmm. Now, I've often kind of told myself, well, when you have, the more people in the family, the more opportunity there is for things to go wrong. I've got a story for every occasion, there's lots and lots of opportunities for disease and misfortune and bad decision-making. And I didn't tell many family members about this. Mm-hmm. In fact, I've only told 3. And one of those people was my aunt. One of my aunts. And what she shared with me that I did not know was that when I was in high school, so 20 plus years ago, my grandmother went to this aunt who was in college at the time. And my grandmother was essentially asking for an anthropologist because my grandmother thought we had a curse on the family. I was a kid. So I had no knowledge of this. My aunt had, her anthropology professor come out and speak with my grandmother, and there was really nothing done about it. But when I, fast forward to 2018, I take the DNA test and I start putting names places.
Wow.
I start seeing the names of slave owners. I found a gentleman who sold his 10-year-old son, who was a slave. The father was the slave owner. And he sold his 10-year-old son to his neighbor. This 10-year-old boy, out of anger, changed his last name. And said, so the last name that we have, and I won't say it on air because I do like my privacy, but our last name is made up.
Really?
Because he did not want to be associated with his father.
Wow.
There's a lot of shame there. Uh-huh. And it is not helpful for me to walk around cultivating shame. Uh-huh. This same, the same side of my family, I learned that they arrived in Opelousas. They were some of the first colonizers of that land. So this side of my family were slaves, were slave owners, were colonizers. Mm-hmm. I cannot and I will not walk around carrying the shame of this any longer. Mm-hmm. Can I instead read about the Opelousas Native Americans? Can I read about what their life was like before my ancestors got there? Can I create space for them in my spiritual practice? And perhaps that creating of space means I don't sage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use my dream catcher.
Mm-hmm.
You know, perhaps I can say, hey, wait a minute. There's something very large happening here. That's an opportunity to reconcile.
Mm-hmm.
I am just getting started on this. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like I have so much more work to do, that this is just the tip of the iceberg that started with, you know, fogginess in my aura.
Incredible.
And since then, so you probably don't remember this, but I asked my grandmother about that in one of our sessions several years ago.
I was thinking, I was like, did she ask about this curse in a session?
Yes, I did, because I was so curious.
What was said?
So curious.
I don't recall what was said.
My grandmother said a few things. So number one, she said that you know, I consciously, well, subconsciously, kind of worked with one aspect of healing in our family. But there were several other linked energies that were also cleared up in that experience. So that means to say, for me, we can trust spirit a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe we don't need to know every single horrible atrocity our ancestors did. Maybe we don't have to burden ourselves, you know, fully with, you know, every single tiny horrible thing that happened, because there's so much. But when we open ourselves to say, I'm willing to do some of this work, guys. Yeah, for sure. I'm willing.
Mm-hmm.
That maybe we're also going to clear up things that we don't know about, which can be very helpful.
Because energy wants to shift into alignment.
Right.
You know, stuck energy wants to move again. It's like water that wants to get into the ground.
Well, this goes back to resistance versus flow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, spirit is like, flow is where we all want to be. We don't want to be in resistance. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So to just kind of say, hey, okay, listen up. The other thing my grandmother said about this, which was super important, I thank you so much for passing along this message. The way that she put it was, when a door has been closed for a really long time, and then that door just goes flying wide open, not everyone is going to be willing to walk through it. So there are, you know, my question at the time was, am I going to see the results of lifting this curse, you know, in our family? Like, are things going to change for us? Because, again, I've got a story for every occasion, and a lot of not great stories, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of early death. And, you know, grandmother's response was, some people will change. Some people are, especially the younger people, are going to be excited to go through this new open door. And there's going to be other people who are frightened. Oh my God, this door's open, but it's always been closed. And they're not going to want to go through that door. And so that guided me to really have a kind of hands-off, non-judgmental view of my family members. You know, there are people who have become sober in that, like, since this, you know, there's a lot of people who are just like, nope, get my life together. You know, I want a different track, myself included, you know, for the record. I want something different for myself. I'm going to pay attention to new things. I'm going to rearrange my life in a way that feels really good to me. And then there are people who will not. And can I not judge them for that? Can I just say, this is your life to live.
Yeah.
And I love you no matter what. As opposed to what I would rather do, me and my giant ego, which is like, why don't you just change already?
Yeah.
We don't have to live like this anymore.
Why don't you just change 10A?
Right? I mean, it's like, no, that's not, Andrea, that's not for you to ask.
Yeah.
So you change, Andrea.
Yeah.
Right?
And with family is so challenging. I think that that family challenges us the way we would not accept these challenges from anyone else.
No, we would not.
We would just simply move away from those people.
Right. And this is why, like, you know, root chakra work is so important. Like, this is what we're talking about. Like, I love the chakra system so much because I love being in my upper chakras. I love being ungrounded. It feels really fun and great for me. And if I do not have the stability in the foundation, all the upper work is kind of superficial.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking only for myself here. I'm definitely not judging anyone else. But it's like, I have to check myself. You know, why do you want to connect with the spirit? Because it's cool?
Yeah.
Or, you know, are you really looking to...
My inner teenager is like, yeah.
Yeah, right? No, it's super fun, right? It's so cool. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And that intention is not sustainable.
It's about practicality.
Yeah. That energy is not sustainable. And looking at all my different ancestors through the lens of love and compassion, it's not easy. And I feel, as I do it, I feel the movement in my own life. I feel the change. And I feel, you know, healing some of these wounds. And I mean, some, because again, there's other things that my family has done, certainly. And there's the whole other, my mother's side of the family, which has its own colonizer roots. But as I begin to look at these wounds, heal these wounds in the ways that I can, ask for support for the ways that I cannot, what I'm finding is that my healed ancestors, and especially my grandmother, are able to work really strongly in my life in the upper chakra kind of ways.
Yeah.
In the ways that are super fun and really exciting. You know, I have these moments of bliss and joy.
I just love that.
Before.
That bliss, man, riding that. I think that sometimes people can get close to it if they're using certain substances, but I can't imagine. I don't know that it's possible to get this quite the same thing. You know, when you're really up there, I think you can get close and get a peek and know that it's possible and experience that sort of euphoria. But when you've gotten there without any kind of substance use, when you've just gotten there through your own spiritual journeying, and knowing that you're enough, that you can, you're enough. You don't need something externally to help you get there.
Yeah.
It's profound. It's transformational.
It really is transformational. I'm so glad you said that. I had this conversation yesterday.
I must be tapping into the energy of your conversation.
I want to do hallucinogens so badly, Kate.
Really? Really?
You talk about attachment. I want those experiences like I've never wanted anything before. And for that reason, I cannot go searching for them. Because I want it too badly. I already know. So I have to kind of, again, I just have to, this is what I feel my homework is. Sit back and do the work, Andrea. Like, stop with the bullshit. This is actually how I talk to myself, and I'm not judging. Like, I want to see bliss and have these cool experiences. And what happens when I do the work, that's when they happen.
Yeah.
So this is a slight side note, not really about appropriation or ancestral healing, but just a side note about bliss.
Mm-hmm.
About 5 years ago, a friend broke up with me.
Oh.
And it was really hard. I think she and I outgrew our friendship contract.
Yeah.
I think we probably should have broken up prior to that, and we just didn't.
Yeah.
So it was very difficult for both of us. And I was in a funk for several months. It was a woman who I was friends with for 15 years. I called her a sister. And she really just grew sick of me. She was kind of sick of my shit. So she was like, well, thank you. Hey, if we are friends and we're not talking about the things that are kind of driving us nuts about each other, it's inevitable. It's just inevitable. So
I guess so.
She grew sick of my shit, and
she was sick of my shit. Oh
yeah,
my God.
Straight up. And that's okay. She has every right to be, because I was sick of hers too. It's all good. I still love her, right?
Yeah.
So I was kind of in this dark place, and I just kept telling myself, I just kept my mantras. I kept running, my morning runs that I would do at the time, and I just really just tried to say, like, I trust this. If she and I are meant to be friends, we will be. I can't beat her over the head. I can't change her mind. All is well. All is well. Even if I don't believe it yet, all is well. Okay, Andrea. And I was running one morning, just a really windy day. And I'm just running down the streets of Oakland, a very busy urban city. And the wind kicks up the leaves. And they spiral right in front of me. They just lift off the ground and they spiral. And I couldn't believe it. I witnessed such beauty. Just running down the street, minding my own business. It was such an incredible, blissful moment to see the perfect swirl of leaves on an urban city street. And that's how I knew I would be okay. That was my moment of bliss.
And you try to explain it. You try to explain it in words. Yeah.
I know. It's like I was crying. I was standing on the street crying. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And it's like, see, that's why you don't need hallucinogens, Andrea.
Yeah. And that's that profound moment. Yeah, because now you get to never doubt that, because you aren't able to write that off. Oh, maybe it was just the mushrooms. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just something. Maybe that wasn't real because I was kind of on mushrooms at the time, or LSD or E or whatever it was, or what's that word? Starts with an A. Ayahuasca.
Oh, ayahuasca.
Yeah. So you don't. There's no doubt when you have experienced something spiritually profound and you're completely sober.
Right.
I've experienced that, and it's so comforting. And there's nothing that can poke holes in that comfort because I was sober at the time. And I've definitely had. I mean, there was that time when I was attempting to treat my pain.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And I definitely had some spiritual insights there, but at the same time, I was very aware of how crazy high I was. Right. And it's honestly, it's just not as enjoyable for me. And I smoked weed fairly conservatively in my 20s and in my 30s. But more as, this was a little different because I was trying to treat a medical condition, and I was experiencing a great deal of physical pain. So there was a lot of kind of stuff that was combining. But even so, it was experiencing that alternate reality. I can really see how that can help people to at least know that maybe there's this alternate reality that's there. But if you can do the work, and if you can get there
without it,
if you can get there without it, then you're doing it performance enhancers or,
right.
you know, and Andrea, I'm gonna retrain. I'm retraining myself, so you're gonna have to give me a minute.
You can call me Dre. That's easy. Or Drea. I answer to all of it. I have many friends and family who call me both Dre and Drea. So whatever's
all right. I'm gonna work it out. Okay.
That's right,
Andrea. All right. So I've got another comment here, another Instagram comment here, and this one's a little bit of a long one, so you're gonna have to stick with me. And we may need to chuckle a little bit through this one. So are you ready?
Okay. Absolutely.
Okay. So, white lady in the profile pic. Good for you. That's like saying, don't wear a white shirt. That's for a white girl only. Sick of this dumb shit. Get some thick skin. We want to believe in what we want. The Indians taught us the way until white man killed them for land and power. But Indian people was the best people. They did everything without them, down and out. I will always smudge, not only because I like it, but I keep the tradition alive. Who would want it to die? White folks ain't the only folk who use sage or smudge. Every damn culture uses it, some type of smudge, not just for natives. Now dressing up, that is wrong. I'd never disrespect ever the beautiful culture they have, the beautiful culture they for natives. The beautiful culture they had. I can't figure out those shoes. Sorry, I can't fill out those shoes. For some reason, I can't read today. All culture uses some kind of smudge, whether it's sage, Palo Santo herbs, rose petals, incense. It's all the same. And this white folk thing, that's just really crazy because, man, black folks do the same thing as well, especially in Africa. They got that voodoo. You need the herbs for that voodoo. I'm sorry. And I think that African is different from natives, but being two different cultures, they use the same thing. Buddhism, Hinduism, I could go on for days. But about this, if you don't want to smudge, that's up to you. But there's a whole lot more cultures out there that does it. It's not just white folks. It was a mess.
Angry typing, eh?
It's a little difficult to read.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just going to first come back to any time we have any reaction, that's an opportunity to go deeper. Why do you feel so strongly that someone else has decided not to smudge? Like, to even feel the need to send an email saying, well, good for you. I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, sweetie, you've been triggered.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Well, and to be fair, the reason why I'm sharing this is to get other people to consider their practices.
Right. And you know, I appreciate the terms in Buddhism, specifically right relationship. And I think we really should go into this term right relationship. Because, you know, this white ladies email about what is right relationship, right? Like, okay, they did it, we did it. We're already using like an us and them. They got that voodoo. Okay. Really, girl?
They got them voodoo.
Yeah, they got them voodoo. It's like, okay, first of all, just like unplugging the anger. I was taught to sage. I was taught that by one of my aunts. Like, I didn't pick it up on the Instagram page. Like, it was taught to me by someone I love and by someone who I know appreciates the practice of smudging with sage specifically. Most of us don't have access to our pre-Christian colonial ancestors. We don't know the practices that our ancestors did. That's been taken from all of us, no matter where our ancestors are from. So we can first say, around the world, all types of energy clearing techniques are used. That is, yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And different types of herbs are maybe burned, may not be. When we begin to look at, for example, you and I are on the west coast of North America. Mm-hmm. The landscape is very different than, say, the East Coast or the central, parts of North America. Mm-hmm. Whatever was used on the land where we are today, very land specific.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Mm-hmm. Like, just saying, well, Africans burn sage. Yeah, some. And it's a very specific type of sage. It's not the white sage that, we may be more familiar with here. Mm-hmm. But not everyone's sage. Like, all and every and everywhere and everything and everyone. It's like these big, giant terms. We're really trying to just make everyone the same.
Yeah.
We're not the same.
Yeah.
And isn't that okay?
Hello, I'm Jen from the Brassy Broadcasting Company. I work on the podcast with Kate. I've popped in to let you know that you've reached the end of part 1 of Kate's conversation with Andrea. But I have good news. You can hear part 2 next week.
That's it for this episode of the Joyful Telepathy Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to book a session with me, click on the link in this episode's description or visit tofinopsychic.com. And you, my dear listener, please use coupon code PODCAST. That's coupon code podcast for $20 off your first session. Until next time, be well and take care of each other.